I'd like to welcome everybody to our AHECS Lunch and Learn. Today's topic is really relevant, using LinkedIn and LinkedIn learning to enhance career service practice. I'm delighted to welcome Deborah Seddon from ATU Sligo, who is going to be our presenter today. Questions can be put in through chat for the moment, and I would ask and request people to turn off their microphones whilst the presentation is going ahead. Deborah, over to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Fanula. Okay. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining today. So I think I probably need to start off by full disclosure. I am no expert in LinkedIn and LinkedIn learning, but I think probably like a lot of people who are engaged in this session today, I would use it often, regularly in practice, daily almost. And I'm definitely an advocate and a champion of the two resources. So I'll share through today some of my understanding and the way that I use these two resources. But hopefully at the end, once I finish the presentation, other people who are on the call who may have used these in different ways, maybe you might be willing to share that with the group too, because I think that's how we learn, and that's how we can improve our individual practice too. Okay, so this is what we're going to, this is the outline of the session then today. We're going to look at a few definitions, start off by looking at LinkedIn, some of the benefits of that. I don't think there'll be anything new probably for you there, but I think it's important to outline it. I want to just give a spotlight to a resource within the talent solutions aspect of LinkedIn. What I am showing you is free, and some of the other free built-in tools that I would use regularly, I'm sure some of you use those too, if not all of you, but just to highlight them just in case. Then we'll move on to LinkedIn Learning and we'll look at some of the benefits of that. I want to do a spotlight here on academic credit. This is something that is being considered quite strongly within ATU at the moment, but it isn't something that's currently happens in ATU. So again, it will be interesting if any of your institutions have kind of progressed with the idea of academic credit. It'd be interesting to hear about that at the end of the presentation. Then I'm going to share some examples of where we've embedded LinkedIn Learning within the careers function within the ATU. We'll talk a little bit about the LinkedIn Learning community of practice, and then I'm just going to finish up with just an end slide with a few resources that you can look at later. These slides will be available to you later, so I've embedded a lot of links within the individual slides, so obviously you don't need to make note of those. You can kind of click onto those and reflect on them after the presentation today. Okay, so definitions. These are really user definitions of LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning, which I think are probably quite self-explanatory. In terms of, I know what we find in ATU, certainly when I'm kind of in front of a class group and I'm talking about LinkedIn Learning, I'll often ask the question, have you activated your LinkedIn Learning account? And, we'll have a huge show of hands in those sessions. But then when I deep dive into that and I ask kind of, additional questions, I discover quite rapidly that it's not LinkedIn Learning that they've activated at all. They've set up a profile on LinkedIn. I don't think that is probably unique to students at ATU Sligo, but it definitely does show that we need to do a lot more work around raising the awareness of LinkedIn Learning and LinkedIn as two separate resources, but then also the relationship between the two. So as we all know, LinkedIn Learning is the resource where users can enhance and build skills and knowledge, and then LinkedIn is obviously that platform where we can showcase those skills and that credibility to potential employers or to akin professionals in terms of enhancing employability. So you'll see there's some strong resources that sit behind these two products. I've just highlighted a couple there for you. So in terms of LinkedIn, the research shows that a full comprehensive LinkedIn profile, which includes skills, education, work history, etc., doubles the callback rate for entry-level applicants. And if you've got people who are using LinkedIn Learning within an institution, and if you compare them to those that are not, those that are using LinkedIn Learning are shown to be 11% more likely to be employed a year after graduation. So, they're quite strong statistics. Okay, so in terms of LinkedIn, like I say, we're going to start with LinkedIn. It is a social media. We know that. It was founded in 2003. There are currently over 1 billion members worldwide. It's seen as one of the most trusted social medias. I suppose that is backed up by the number of members. It was the most trusted until the last Digital Trust Benchmark survey, where it was pipped by Pinterest, which is at the moment that's holding that top position. So some of the benefits, like I say, I don't think this is anything new to you, so I'll quickly talk through these. But LinkedIn is obviously, it's great in terms of giving us that capacity to expand our professional networks. It's great if we are looking to find job, or we're supporting people to find jobs, and obviously for businesses to grow. It's used with a lot of organisations in that business aspect. In terms of gaining industry insights and providing access to news and trends, that's really important, and that's obviously plays a huge role when we are preparing students for interview, in terms of doing that research in terms of the industry and in terms of maybe the competitors or whatever with the company that they're looking for. It does, as we've already mentioned, helps us to showcase and establish credibility. So to highlight those skills maybe that we've gained through LinkedIn Learning, if we've linked the two accounts, but also to highlight our education history, our experiences, etc. And also in terms of, it gives us an opportunity to join groups and to engage through different ways through the platform with different individuals or groups, to contribute to those or to learn from those conversations that are happening through this domain. So LinkedIn does have multiple products. We're not going to look at a lot of those products today. A lot of those products are business related products which have a cost attached to them, and they would be products that recruiters would use to help maximise their recruitment and selection processes. But we are going to have a look at an aspect of the talent insights, which is the spotlight, in a few minutes, and then I'll progress obviously onto LinkedIn Learning subsequently. Okay, now I realise this is a very busy slide, but like I said before, I've embedded the links that you need within the slide, so you'll be able to go and have a look at this in a far more user-friendly, manageable way. I've just kind of put these screen grabs on just to really highlight the section headings of the information that you can gather. So this LinkedIn Talent Solutions, this resource aspect of that part of LinkedIn, I've only come across this quite recently. Some of you might have been using it for a period of time. Certainly is something that's quite new for me. We all know that LinkedIn gathers lots of insights, obviously through the information that is uploaded by users and by organisations. And I think perhaps a lot of us will have used it, the research and the insights in terms of highlighting skill gaps and the most in-demand jobs. Okay, so I think that's perhaps a given. The bit that I hadn't seen until quite recently were the hiring guides that I actually think could be very useful, and I definitely will be using these in practice going forward. So this is the link to the resources section within this area. It's completely free. There's no cost attached to it. And what you'll find within this section, if you haven't seen it before, are hundreds of job descriptions. Okay, so these are obviously excellent for those students who are looking ahead and starting to think about what they may want to be doing, to have a look at what the skills and qualifications, the requirements are. And for those who are at the stage of applying for interview, they can go into the specific job description, and it actually gives suggested interview questions both in terms of the hard skills, the behavioural and kind of more generic kind of questions attached. But I thought that was particularly useful. And like I say, that might be something that you all might want to have a look at if you haven't seen it before. Okay, my favourite tool on LinkedIn, and again, I don't suspect this is new for most of you, is the jobs menu. So the briefcase icon. So when you're in your LinkedIn account, if you just look at the menu bar, the jobs icon, I am always in this tool and I'm always talking to the students about it and encouraging them to use it. This does not need a premium account, and I think sometimes certainly the students that I come across, they think they need a premium account to access this. You do not. There are additional features that you can get from this if you have a premium account, but it's absolutely it's got so many uses even if you haven't. So within this briefcase, there's a really good section which really is your log. It's your learning log. It's your saved posts. It's your saved articles. It's the jobs that you've looked at. If you have a LinkedIn account attached to LinkedIn Learning, it will show you your learning history. So that's a really good point to go in to be reminded and reflect upon what you've obviously kind of highlighted through searches in the past. The preferences section is obviously really useful for those individuals who are using this in terms of looking for work. And it's about helping the students, I suppose, to decide in terms of how they want to set up their preferences and what's going to work for them in terms of shouting out very loudly or in a more quieter way, in terms of the fact that they're open for work and they're looking and they want to be searched and want to be searchable by companies. What is quite disappointing is they've discontinued the skills assessment. So I don't know if, like me, you will have advocated this with your students or you've even tried it out yourself. What LinkedIn did have were assessments, or I tried out the PowerPoint assessment, a little while ago just to see how it worked. Obviously, just to be a bit more informed when I was talking to the students. And that was a good way of endorsing skills that employers and recruiters would have searched on, and that would have highlighted you to them in there. So that's unfortunate, but I think the road that LinkedIn Learning are going down is to try and encourage more people to use LinkedIn Learning and to showcase any credentials that they've gained from content that they've engaged in through LinkedIn Learning onto their LinkedIn pages. So they have changed. You may have seen it in the About section on the profile aspect of LinkedIn. They have added in there the opportunity to add up to 5 top skills. So you can endorse those, obviously, through the content through LinkedIn Learning, but also through, work experience or, other academic or short or e-learning courses. So there are ways to do that. And obviously we know how important it is to highlight the skills. You can see there some of the statistics I've added onto the slide here, which just highlight in terms of how much hirers do value that skill and that demonstration of skill content. If your LinkedIn account is synced with the LinkedIn Learning account, there is a job seeker guidance element that's really useful. And you can see I've added here the checklist for best practice, which I do use that with students. That's quite useful, I think, just in terms of giving students something to kind of, tangibly tick off so they know in terms of where they're at, in terms of their progression, in terms of looking and, progressing through that application process. The resume builder is something that I use too. So I would use the resume builder for students to be able to see how the detail that they've put into the profile of the LinkedIn actually is shown, how it's reflected within a resume or a CV format. And sometimes that's easier. I find some students can kind of see more gaps when they do that. And sometimes they will use that the actual product of the resume builder, and they'll add to that, and they'll use that as the foundations for, you know, a CV template for themselves. So I would use that. Obviously, I know you know, a lot of us have software like, you know, the career set, etc. So, but it can be a good starting point for students. The tool that I really love, I'm sure this is the same with quite a few of you too, is the interview prep feature. So coming from an institution where we don't readily have a tool for interview prep, this is a free resource that we can use with the students, and they can get some basic AI feedback from this too. So if you have been in this, you know that, you know, when you click into the interview prep icon, you'll get 26 commonly asked interview questions. If you click into the categories, you'll be able to see industry specific questions. And to the right, once you're in it, click into any of the questions at all. To the right, what you'll see is an overview really in terms of what's meant by that question. The first, as you scroll down that page, you'll see it's kind of really trying to get you to activate your premium account. But what I always say to the students is scroll past all of those those enticements, and at the bottom there is kind of a bit more detail in terms of how you can answer the question in terms of an answer framework, which can be a good starting point before the students then. And I always encourage them to go and click onto the practice and get feedback feature, where they can choose to either practice type in a potential answer, which they might want to do that as a starting point. But ultimately, what I would be encouraging students to do is to use the video practice feature, which is obviously where they can choose to deliver an answer on any of the questions within this particular aspect of the LinkedIn platform. And they will, from the first time they deliver on that particular question, they will get a basic AI report back. Now, it's not on the content of what they say, but it is on how they say it. So it does, as you can see here, it gives some feedback in terms of pace, in terms of filler words. It gives some clarity in terms of if any sensitive phrases have been used, and also some tips to improve responses. So that is intuitive. It is useful. It's obviously is not as sophisticated as some of these you know, licensed products that I know a lot of HEIs have, but it still is useful. And what the students can also do, or what users can also do with this, is once they have saved their video, they can either just choose to keep it for their eyes only, or they can share it with a trusted person in their network. So I have had students in the past who've shared their attempts to answer certain questions, and what you can do is either hop on a video within the LinkedIn feature, or through the messaging function, give them some feedback, or take that conversation, you know, away from LinkedIn and, you know, meet face to face with obviously that video there recorded that you've had shared, that you've been able to look at, and you can kind of reflect and talk through any suggested kind of improvements. So that's a feature that I think is fantastic. Okay, so that's LinkedIn Learning. In terms of some of the key features that I would use, that I certainly think enhance career service practice. Now we'll move on to LinkedIn Learning. I don't know if you know Linda here in the corner. I very vaguely have a vague memory of lynda.com. So that was founded in 1995 by Linda Wainman and her husband Bruce Heaven, and it was really conceived as an online learning library for wannabe web designers. But LinkedIn obviously saw this and saw the potential of this, and they bought lynda.com, which really formed the foundations for LinkedIn Learning, and it was fully migrated into LinkedIn Learning in 2019. Okay, some of the benefits then, so it does have an extensive learning resource catalogue. So there's more than 16,000 expert-led courses available at the moment. And obviously within that, there are professional certificates and certificate preparation courses, lots of content in terms of developing skills and knowledge. And we'll talk about the academic credits as a spotlight in a few minutes. I know within the ATU, it would be the Microsoft, the AWS, the project management kind of certified and prep courses that they would tend to navigate towards. You might have a different experience in your institutions, but that's great in terms of endorsing and showcasing and preparing students for the next step or users for the next step. It is customized learning, so it will recommend content based on what the user puts in. So in terms of their current jobs or the skills, there is a content mapping feature, and I've included a link to the current careers mapping on a later slide, so you'll be able to have a look at that later on, just to kind of have a look at some of the courses that are available that LinkedIn highlight themselves, or LinkedIn Learning highlight themselves. There is a new feature, a kind of careers feature in there, where you can gather career insights. So what users can do is they can actually identify a career goal, and what administrators of LinkedIn Learning can do is they can go in and they can have a look at what some of the career goals are, so they can get an idea of what the users are actually looking at the moment. And obviously that can inform our practice in terms of perhaps sessions that we want to progress with or highlight or develop that we can share with our student body. It's affordable in the sense that if your organisation has a subscription, it's completely affordable because it's free for everyone within that institution. If your institution doesn't have a licence for LinkedIn Learning, in terms of individual subscription, there is a month free. So, it would be about encouraging any users to make the most of that month, because subsequently after that 1 month free, at the moment it's around €40 per month, so it's quite expensive. So yeah, ideally it would be through an organisational subscription if at all possible. Okay, so in terms of curating collections and learning paths, this is perhaps what we've used a lot within the ATU. You do need admin functionality. So whoever is the owner of LinkedIn within your institutions, if you have LinkedIn Learning, you need to ask for that admin functionality if you haven't got it already, to be able to have a look at some of these insights, look at some of the analysis and the reporting, but also to create your own curate learning paths and collections that you can share. Then you can create your own personal ones, but if you want to share them and set them up for use with your institution, with users within your institution, you need that admin functionality. So the way that we would generally start this process is we would ask LinkedIn Learning for some content mapping. So you can ask them for content mapping on any subject area. So you can see here, these are the generic ones, and this is what this link takes you to, which is the generic career mapping for career readiness. So you can see some of the content, some of the learning opportunities that you have within that, and it also gives some, within that same content mapping, it gives some idea of some of the top skills, so the skills that are in demand by employers. So these are, again, some learning content that you can engage with, or your learners can engage with, which ultimately they can obviously showcase those on the LinkedIn accounts, which is obviously going to be instrumental in terms of them showing up in searches and endorsing skills and increasing their employability. So the way that we would, after the content mapping, what I would do is that I would then start to set up a collection. So say if I was doing a content mapping, for example, for CVs, I would kind of go through the content suggested by LinkedIn Learning, and I would also have a wider search just to see if there was anything in addition, anything new, and I would have a look through those resources and kind of pick the ones out that I think are particularly relevant for the cohorts. You do find within LinkedIn Learning there's a lot of American content, so sometimes that doesn't resonate. So it is important to obviously have a look and reflect on the content and think about who the user is going to be and what message it is that you want to get across. So once I've created a collection, then what I will do is I'll use that collection to then think about how I can develop that in terms of the learning path. So the learning path is really just giving a format really to people's learning. So it gives them stepping stones to build up that learning in an organised way to obviously reach an end goal. So you can see we've created a few learning paths now in ATU. This is one. It's quite an old one now, actually, but it definitely needs to be reviewed. But this is one about maximising your LinkedIn. So this is one that we created to try and help to raise that awareness of the distinction between LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning, but also the relationship between the two. So what you can do here is you can split it into sections and build up that learning, as you can see on there. There is, or there are curator guides. So I do have the PDFs of those. So if people think they would be useful, I can certainly attach the PDFs when I send on the slides to Caroline. So that's no problem. So you can have a look at those. They're really comprehensive curator guides, which just give you some really good tips and tricks in terms of how you can develop these collections and specifically the learning paths. So I can definitely share those with you. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to put a spotlight really on the academic credit. Like I say, ATU don't currently use this opportunity, but maybe some of your institutions do. And like I say, it'd be interesting to hear if they do in terms of how that works. But this is where partner universities have used learning paths. So they've kind of established learning paths or content that they feel they can endorse, and that is part of an assessment process, really, where the content is the learning outcomes from that content is assessed through however they choose, and it's actually they assign credits to it. So I've given you the example there of the University of Huddersfield, which if you click on the embedded link there, you'll get more information about that. But I've also given you the general link, which gives you all of the partners and all of the ways they've used this opportunity to use LinkedIn Learning content and to assign credit to it. Okay, so that was really, I just wanted to give you a flavour of that and just kind of, open that conversation. If it is that anyone has used it, I'd just be really interested to hear about that. And certainly if people are interested, we can keep you updated with the progress in terms of ATU, in terms of their thinking and the way that they may choose to do this in the future. Okay, so some examples then of where we would have embedded LinkedIn Learning within the ATU. So what we would certainly use it within our VLE. So within Sligo, for example, we use Moodle. So you can see this is our Moodle page. It's just a screen grab of the Moodle page. And we do have a LinkedIn Learning tile within our Moodle page, within our Careers Office Moodle page, and it gives the links to all of the learning paths and the collections in there for the students to be able to go and obviously have a look at. We have a career readiness digital badge, and again, one of the tiles in terms of when we're looking at taking action, it does embed LinkedIn Learning paths within that too. So it's just about trying to signpost these learning paths that you create in different ways. We certainly signpost it within workshops and presentations. So this is an example here of another learning path that we created in ATU on interview preparation. So that's quite a popular one, where we kind of look at the different sections, in terms of the before, during and after interview, and we just extract and take snippets of content to share with the students there. I think one thing I didn't say before is I think it's really important to look at the length of your learning paths if you are creating learning paths. We have found that 20 minutes is that's the optimum amount of time. So we try not to go over the 20 minutes because we find if it's any longer than that, it almost switches the students off, and it almost puts them off engaging with it. So our learning paths are 20 minutes, but we do take extracts of content from lots of different courses and programs within the LinkedIn Learning platform. So what the students can do if they are really interested in certain pieces of content that we've given, they can deep dive then into the larger pieces of material that we've taken from, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. And then this graphic here is an event that we hosted. Now it was probably last academic year, called Are You LinkedIn? And this was an event. Our license was up for renewal, and we needed to do something fast in terms of building up the activation rates and the engagement rates of LinkedIn Learning if we wanted to keep the resource. So the careers team, along with other functions within the ATU, we worked together to create an Are You LinkedIn event. And this was really about, we got some prizes. So LinkedIn Learning were very kind. They did give us some prizes as incentives. And what we did was we curated learning paths, both for the students and also for the staff. So academic PMSS staff, and then the students, so 3 different learning paths. And in order to be put into the draw for the prizes that were available, the users had to activate and engage with obviously the most relevant learning path for them. So we saw a huge hike actually in terms of activations from that event. And we also found, or what we also did on the concourse when we were promoting the event, is we asked students, we just used Mentimeter to ask the students about what skill they'd like to develop. And we found that was really useful in terms of, we started to build a really nice word cloud in terms of the skills that people wanted to, obviously to polish. And from that, obviously, that information, then we could create learning paths around those skills and really deliver upon that and help students and help the users to obviously build and signpost those skills that they wanted to increase. Okay, so the LinkedIn Learning Community of Practice then. So this is an active community of practice. We don't meet that regularly. We probably meet 2 or 3 times a year. We are due to meet now in the next few weeks. So there will be a Teams link sent round quite soon. We've just sent a doodle poll round to the current members of the LinkedIn Learning Community of Practice just to find out, just to kind of lock down a time that's going to suit most of us. But the LinkedIn Learning Community of Practice is open to everybody. Everyone's welcome to drop in, every so often, or to call in and drop into every section. So, it's completely open to anybody. And we do welcome you people to get involved if they're interested. And it's really there, obviously, LinkedIn Learning, when we think that there's over 16,000 courses or pieces of content on LinkedIn Learning, that's huge. So although we can reduce and we can focus the content that we look at through features such as the content mapping, it is quite an overwhelming task. So as a community, as a group, that's what our main aim is to kind of share pieces of content that we particularly like and look at creating collections that we can all draw from our different institutions, that we can create our learning paths from for obviously focus towards our particular cohorts and the needs of our particular cohorts. So if you are interested, drop me a line and we'll add you to the mailing list so you don't miss out. And we'd love to see a few new faces at the next meeting in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so I think this is the last slide. So these are some of the resources that I've just picked out that I think might be quite useful to you if you want to reflect and grow your awareness more in terms of LinkedIn Learning. So they do. LinkedIn Learning do have a YouTube channel. So there's actually some really good content on there. So that's certainly, if you have a bit of time, I would say tune into that and have a look at some of the videos. There's some great content. There is a LinkedIn economic map. So that's actually quite useful for us because it does give a real-time representation of the career journeys of the different members of LinkedIn. So that's actually really, I find that quite useful sometimes to use in sessions, or to inform sessions with students. There is a pathfinder function. So, I'm talking about, I talked about the content mapping that your customer success manager they can send you a specific content mapping related to the obviously the topic areas that you're interested in. But anybody can just use the pathfinder function and that will curate learning paths within a specific goal that you type into it. So that's actually quite a nice function. It is limited. It's not as broad or as sophisticated as the content mapping, but it's still useful as a starting point. So that might be something you might want to have a look at if you haven't looked at before. On LinkedIn, there is a LinkedIn Learning Higher Education collaborative community. So I would encourage everyone to join that. So that's quite useful in terms of finding out what other institutions across the globe are doing. So definitely that's something that if you're using LinkedIn, you might want to become a part of. There is a LinkedIn Learning blog, so that's where you'll find out the latest trends and the latest insights. So that's really useful, again, in terms of gathering statistics that you might want to showcase to just kind of impress upon certain points within your sessions or your conversations with students or with staff, with management. There is a workplace learning report produced every year. So that's really insightful again. So you'll find a lot of the graphics will come from that report. So that's the direct link to the report itself. And the LinkedIn Learning Career Development resource section, you can find that workplace learning report in there and lots of other features. But that is quite a nice kind of central place for you to go in and gather lots of different LinkedIn Learning resources. LinkedIn Learning do offer their own training webinars. There's not as many now as there used to be, but you can still have a look at the schedule. So they have a schedule for 2024 and they're free to join. So the regular ones, the one that I particularly like is the Rock Your Profile. So that's quite a useful one if you just want to refresh and just make sure you've got the most up-to-date information for when you're passing on that information and you're supporting your students to obviously develop their LinkedIn profiles and to maximize that to obviously increase their employability. And that's just my email address. So if it is that you're interested in joining that mailing list for the LinkedIn Learning Community of Practice, please do email me and I'll add you to that, and we'd love to see you at the next meeting. Okay, so that's the end in terms of what I want to talk about.